Hello and welcome to the May Divine Guidance episode of the Anika Apple podcast. I'm your host, Anika Apple, a trusted advisor, spiritual strategist, and a coach. And I am so pleased to be with you here today to bring the message for divine guidance for the month of May. For those of you who are new to the podcast, on the Anika Apple podcast, we focus on healing across our roles as leaders in community with one another. And we focus each month on the divine guidance. What is God saying to us about what is happening in the world? How do we prepare ourselves for the changes and transformation that are all around us? And of course, what is important for us to keep front of mind as we think about our journey to heal ourselves and to support each other in our healing. And I am blessed to be an advisor and spiritual strategist, as I mentioned. And part of my work is to help companies and individuals to bring themselves back to the center of who they are, deepening their connection with God and the truth within, and then to show up and deliver the things that they do in work and in life in ways that are fully aligned. And it is part of my divine assignment to bring forward the prophetic word here through the podcast. And I also bring my prophetic gifting into engagements that I have at corporations and individuals alike. And so I am blessed to be here with this message today. I'm always excited about whatever it is that God is sharing with us, even when it's complex, because what I recognize is that what God gives us the preparation for enables us to then think differently and move differently and be ready as things begin to unfold before us. The prophetic guidance in the Divine Guidance podcast comes directly from God. I sit and God speaks through me, and that is how it works each and every episode. And we do this episode once each month. You will find that there is an archive of all of these episodes on YouTube, and I encourage you to check them out. Certainly, if you look across the last couple of years and reflect on some of the things that you've seen, you might even want to pull out your journal and look at the things that you have seen come to pass. I have been blown away by the way that things have unfolded that God has shared with us. Sometimes with the word being super clear and the way that it manifests, and I see the experiences being very different. And sometimes they're the exact same vision of what God has given me. And so, how God works with us is a mystery. And that brings us to our topic today. So, today's episode is entitled May, the month of magic and mysteries. And I always start each podcast episode with a segment that I call From My Heart to Yours, where I'm just speaking to you from the heart space about what it is that I think it's important for you to know. In the divine guidance episodes, often I get right into it, but today we need to have a little heart to heart moment before I bring forward the word that God has delivered to us. So, from my heart to yours, I want to remind you that we are in a time and a moment where God has given us the ability to reclaim those things that belong to us. And a lot of times when we hear the word about us reclaiming, we think about the things that were stolen from us, right? Or that were misplaced, the things that were delayed. But what I want to encourage you to think about in this moment are the definitions of the words that you use that have been misappropriated for ways, for reasons, for intentions that are other than divine. As you saw the name of this episode, for some of you, it might have ruffled your feathers, so to speak, around what you think about spiritually and religiously. The word magic tends to have this connotation that it is instantaneously connected with something evil, something that we think is not of God. There is an opportunity for you to recognize a much more expansive definition and understanding of who God is. And that may be a different podcast episode, but I will tell you this, that what is a miracle if it is not magic and mystery? The difference being who is the divine source that it flows from? Is the source of it divine? I want to read a couple of definitions to you so that I can help you understand how important it is to begin reclaiming words to use them in the way that God intends for God's good and for God's glory, because we understand that all things work together for God's glory, for God's good, for the good grand design that God has for their children. For we know that we are called according to God's purpose. So a miracle is defined as surprising and welcome event, not explicable by natural and scientific laws. It's the work of divine agency. We would all agree that, and we use the word miracles thinking about God, the divine, what is higher than us, right? And so, in the same way, it is easy for us to make miracles synonymous with God. But when we think about the word magic, we think about people, or often maybe many people think about people conjuring up something that works against what we believe is for the good of all. And that is simply not true. Magic is defined as the power of apparently influencing the course of events by using mysterious or supernatural forces. Let us pause for a moment and think about the miracles that Jesus performed. Were they not indeed miracles that happened using a supernatural force, a divine force, a work of divine agency? So I want you to understand that when God said today's episode was about the magic and mystery in the month of May, that it is important for us to recognize that there are some things that we are going to experience that are indeed mysterious. And there are absolutely things that are going to happen that are magic. And that magic you may want to make synonymous with miracles. But it's about time for you to begin redefining the words that are yours to use that truly define the authority that God has, and that same divine authority that rests within you. So, from my heart to yours, this is a moment for you to begin reclaiming that which has been taken from you, that which has been defined in a way that minimizes who you are divinely, that desires to make you much smaller than what the authority God has given you declares that you are, that works to make you feel as if you are not as divinely worthy as you are. This word that I'm using, the words right now of magic and mystery and miracle, bringing those together are just simply one example. But you know the words that when they come up, there is a connotation in your mind that automatically associates with something that you believe is not of God. And it would be good for you to spend some time interrogating the root of those words. Where does that feeling and connotation come from? And is it indeed true? There is a reconciliation of words that is happening. God is reclaiming the words for their good. And we have the opportunity to recognize and understand that simply because someone takes something that is good and misappropriates it, uses it for their own selfish intentions, or to create a condition for others that is undesirable, or even to perpetuate something that we would designate as evil, it does not mean that the thing in and of itself is bad. It's the hands that it is in that choose to weaponize the thing that divinely created was meant and intended for good. You may have lots of different feelings about this perspective about words, and I encourage you to sit with yourself and to explore first where that discomfort comes from. It will be telling. It will help you understand a lot about your relationship with the world and environment around you. And then I encourage you to sit with God and to ask for divine revelation around those words, quieting your mind and your own thoughts to receive from God so that God can show you what needs to be redefined and enrolled, engaged in the lives of those who know that they are called by God. And that is what you need to hear today from my heart to yours. So, as we get into our episode today, I will tell you for those of you that are new to the podcast, let me start there. Welcome. I'm glad to have you. The Divine Guidance podcast is truly me just moving myself out of the way and allowing God to pour through me. And I always start off these episodes by reminding you that it is important whenever you are hearing a prophetic word from anyone that you should always be taking it back to God first, validating the message that has come through, sitting with God to see what else God desires that you know and understand about it, and being intentional about asking God how this needs to show up in your life. As we who have prophetic gifting are delivering the word to the world, we recognize that when we give a word like this that is for the collective, that it meets people at all different places and times of their journey. The beauty of what God does is that it can be relevant to everyone at the same time. But the relevance in what actions you need to take, what things you need to be specifically aware of, are going to differ based on where you are and what you are called to do. And so I always encourage you to take that word and sit with it and to be sure that before you walk away from that conversation with God, you ask intentionally, how am I to bring this to life, in my own walk, in my own assignment, in what it is that you desire for me to do? So, that said, I am encouraging you to open yourself up to hear the things that flow through today, and also know that you have agency to apply things to your life in ways that make sense for you, and that should happen under the direction, under the connection that you have with God. You will hear me say God because I refer to the divine, who you might consider the divine as God. That is the way that I know God. And for many of you that may share a different religious belief or might share a different way spiritually that you consider that which is higher of ourselves, feel free to utilize whatever word it is that aligns with you. I think that we are in a time where we are moving past this overt desire to separate ourselves one from another, to recognize that we are connected through the love of God, through the work that we witness through the life of Christ, that we are in a time where we need more solidarity and togetherness and recognition of the universal law of love, because that is indeed how we are going to heal and connect ourselves one to another. And so feel comfortable to hear and understand the words that come through. And then again, as you sit with God, the divine source, whatever it is that you call the, the divinity above you, what that which is greater than you, which you are connected to receive the divine wisdom that you need for your own specific path. Okay, so let us get into the message. So as you heard me open with this magic and mystery in the month of May, the thing that was coming up specifically around this particular message is that we are entering a time where things are truly going to be unexplainable in ways that we did not think we would experience. Now, know that everyone will experience and witness things that they cannot explain. For those of you who know this, who have been feeling this, who God has been speaking to about this specific part of the word is for you. The things that you have been asking for, waiting for, seeking God for, waiting for, the word that's coming up right now is recompense. Like there are things that you had been bringing before God saying, hey, this was supposed to happen and it hasn't, and all of these things, and you've been waiting for that. God wants you to know and understand in this moment that things are coming to you like a freight train. I literally see this train that is pulling forward, and in the back of it, there are all of these things. There are these train cars cars that are just overflowing. I see train cars that have these mounds on top of it. The mounds look like they're gold coming in to meet you at the station. So it is a time of great recompense, and there is a lot that is flowing to you. May is going to be the door opening, the beginning of you really feeling the season. You've had a couple of things that have happened, some divine appointments and connections that have flowed in the last couple of months, really since the beginning of 2025. You can equate it when you said your last big yes to God. Yes, I will do this thing that you're asking me to do that I don't know how to do. Yes, I will follow what it is that you have shown me to do. Yes, I will speak and preach to people, even though I don't see myself as qualified for that. That big yes that you gave was followed by some things, some divine favor and some moments that helped you feel deeply into what it is that God has been trying to do in your life for a while now, but it was just a sampling. And God is saying, I gave you enough to keep leading you forward to get to this point, but now you are here. And if you pause in this moment, what's been happening around you is God has been preparing a stage, a platform for you. God has been bringing people to hear and recognize your voice. And we'll talk about how that relates to the next theme in just a second. So that connection to recognizing your voice when you speak and seeing you in whatever the platforms are. Some of these things are platforms and opportunities that you have in the work that you do. Some of them for you may be on social media. Some of you may be on physical stages. Some of you are in community and organizations that you have. Some of them are simply within the confines of your family. But what God is saying is, I have now given you the place, and now I'm going to begin to perform the miracles before people who are witnessing you so that they understand what I am doing in this time. God says to tell you in this moment that many have forgotten that everything happens underneath my hand. Many of you have forgotten that I still give the allowance and approval for things to go forth, because as I do that, I can choose to use things for good. That doesn't mean that God orchestrates every single thing. We know that there are things that happen in the world that are not aligned with the desire of God, but that God can pull that thing and shift it and use it for good. But it is God that allows things to happen in the earth, not designating each of the occurrences that happens, but to recognize that there are things that have to occur in order for people to come back to the center of the truth of who they are. It's very difficult to wrap our minds around the fact that things have to happen to bring us back to the truth that's already residing inside of us. We go through things and think to ourselves, I would never wish to go through that. Yet we put ourselves in the situation of going through those experiences because we have been in denial of the truth of what resides within us. We don't remember all of the things that we have already aligned to for this life when we co created our path forward with God. We find ourselves in moments where we distrust what God is saying to us, and we avert our eyes back to what the world is saying, what the world is doing, and we find definition in things outside of us instead of the definition that God has placed on the inside of us through our purpose. So God wants us to be reminded that they are still well in control and always will be, and that God is utilizing this time to create things that happen in our life that draw our attention and others to the majesty of who God is, and that we will see it in the form of magic. You will hear people more than ever saying it happened just like magic. I don't know. It was magic. It was God. It happened divinely. It must have been orchestrated. It was like a miracle. And what's so interesting about that is the word miracle. Many of you who are very spiritually grounded, you have a relationship with the word miracle. There are many people who don't have the same spiritual grounding, who do not have that same relationship with miracle. What do I mean by that? If we go back to the definition of miracle, it's something that's not explicable by natural and scientific laws, the work of divine agency. A lot of people still have an issue with believing that things happen through a force that is not natural, not based in scientific law, but instead is supernatural. We have a problem with that. We want things to add up in a way that we can see all of the details of the equation. We don't like when God leaves an exponent in there. We don't like when God leaves it open for us to have to define something else that happened in the middle. We want to see the equation that says 2 plus 2 equals 4. God wants to give us an equation that says 2 plus 2 plus blank equals 27, because God has this vision for us that we will come into a time where we believe and trust and walk by faith instead of simply by the things that we can see. We're still in a moment where we are so deeply gravitating to what we can see and trust in front of us. And God has been constantly pulling us forward to believe and trust in the divine truth. And to know divine truth is to tap in to the truth within you and feel into the connection rather than see the connection in the physical. This time is going to require you to lessen your relationship to what you can see and make sense of. So, for those of you that I am speaking to who know you have already said your divine yes, who know you have already said, yes, God, I believe. I am walking forward. I don't know how this is going to work. This message is for you to bring your eyes to a moment where you are embracing and receiving and in expectation of miracles and magic. And let's go to this word mystery. A mystery is just simply something that is difficult to explain. There are other definitions, but the simplicity is what we need here. It's difficult to explain how Jesus is who Jesus is and physically came and walked the earth. It's difficult to explain. Matter of fact, you can't explain it without an understanding, a revelation, and a belief in God, the capabilities of God. And even with that, we know that there is a varying belief of who Jesus is and what Jesus means to the world. It is a mystery how that stone was rolled away, and we celebrate Easter every year, right? And we don't see the body of Jesus still in there. It's mysterious, and it is a miracle, and it is also magical that it happened. Do you understand what I am saying to you? The mysteries of God are things that we cannot understand and explain in our humanness. They cannot be fully explained by the things that we know and have learned in the world. They are bigger than that because so is God. But in this time, we will experience more and more mysteries. And the question is, as you experience these mysteries, these things that you cannot explain in your humanness, will you ignore it? Will you try to minimize it to what the human mind has the capacity to create in and of itself? Or will you honor that it is a mystery of God? Because what God desires to do in your life is draw attention back to them. And the way they do that is by creating these inexplicable things that happen in the midst of challenge, in the midst of darkness, in the midst of difficult seasons, in the midst of your healing journey, in the midst of your disappointment, in the midst of your hurt, in the midst of the dynamics of things changing all around you that you thought you understood and had a hold of. That's what God desires to do. And what God is asking of you is, will I declare that it could have only been God? I don't hear God saying, I need you to go tell everybody, it's a mystery, it's a mystery, it's a mystery, it's a mystery. I hear God saying very clearly, I want you to point people back to me. And you can think in this moment about the impact when people around the world are saying it's just simply unexplainable, but God. It was by God's hand that I am still here. It was by God's hand that this thing happened. It was by God's hand that we met. It was by God's hand that I have this clarity. It was by God's hand that this opportunity came. It's by God's hand that I wasn't touched by this thing that happened. It's by God's hand. Will you declare that the truth of it is it's not a miracle of your own making? It's not magic that you created by yourself. It's not a mystery that unfolded that you somehow solved on your own, but it is the work of God. So May is a door opening for us that is filled with promise, that is filled with opportunity and things that are game changing. Some of you are going to begin what I hear is a 4-month journey to amass opportunities and abundance, which does include wealth that transforms the generational patterns that you have had in your family. 4 months, 4 months, a 4-month journey. And many of you are walking into a season where you're saying, I have been doing this walk for a long time. And I know I've been doing what God has been telling me to do. And I'm still not seeing the proof of what God has been telling me. And, there is scripture that says we will reap if we faint not. And it's a reminder to us that we need to keep going even when we cannot see God's hand. What's coming up for me is, can you trust him when you can't trace him? And I think that came up last month's episode as well. And God is saying, I need you to hold on a little bit longer. And here's the thing, in the moment of frustration that you may be navigating, because you are waiting, and waiting is hard, we know. But in your frustration, God is doing something really big. And in your frustration, God is moving in such a way that you will have an even bigger testimony to share. And so while you may not want to wait, what you don't understand is that on your other side of your waiting for this time, God has the ability to blow your mind with what they put into your hands. So what I hear God saying is keep holding on to the vision that I gave you. Hold on to what I told you will happen. Hold on to the promise and trust me to supersede even those expectations. So the question is for you, would you trade having whatever it is that you expect to have it in this moment? Or are you willing to wait for what God really wants to put into your hands? Because if you will say yes to the latter, God can impact a greater number of people. And that's what God desires. And I believe that if you really look inside and you go back to who you know that you are and what you know you are here to do, that you will know that the waiting season is aligned with your ability to deliver what it is that you know is in your purpose. God's not having you wait so that you are in suffering. God is preparing you and preparing them, those who need to hear your story and testimony, where it will be the catalyst for them, excuse me, the catalyst for them to turn back to God and to come back into alignment with who they know they're called to be. The month of May is a beginning for us. Let's talk about the other side of it. There is also magic, divine magic that happens as people are blown away by God's ability to change circumstances in an instant. And so what God is saying is that people who are not ready to receive, they will still witness the magnitude of who I am as they go through this month. And what I'm seeing is things that look like they're moving on a particular track in an instantaneous turn of events. Things that are changing course, things that look like they are on their way. It is super consistent with what we have been seeing and heard said. And then all of a sudden, the path changes just like that. And what God is saying in this moment is in some cases, you will see a path change and no one can explain why. Even the one who declares that there has to be a change of course will not have the words to explain why. And when you see that, having heard this message, you will know that it is at the hand of God. There is much to come that does not have this sunshiny, happy foundation, this blessed message of the beauty of what is in this season. There is a lot of darkness. There are desolate moments. And even in those, we can be assured that God's hand is on it, that God will still take those moments and turn them into opportunities for our learning, for our growth, for healing, and for love to abound across the collective. It is unfortunate that we have to be at a time where we do have to go through some of the things that we have to go through in order for us to come back to the truth of who we are and to come into community with one another to build heaven here on earth. The next theme that God was sharing for me with the month of May is that there are going to be a lot of opportunities for us to heal. And what I saw is that this healing is across old patterns. So it's our behavior, it's things that have been a part of our family lineage. They're things that have been a part of the way that you've learned to survive in this lifetime. There are the ways in which you might walk in a room and dim your light a bit or diminish your voice when someone else has an opinion to the contrary. There are patterns in your relationships that have been perpetuating themselves. And it is time for you to heal those things. Many of you have already been called into seasons of deep healing where God has been revealing to you places where there is trauma, where you already thought that trauma was already resolved. And you're like, this again? This is a potent and powerful time for you to heal that which comes up. I would encourage you to start off the month of May with a declaration to yourself that whatever God shows you, you are committed to healing and not healing it just on the surface, but you're committed to doing the deep work in order to allow whatever it is to come up by the root so that you can heal it once and for all. Many of you that have been wrestling with these different themes coming up around healing are called to heal it not just for yourself, but for the generations, for your lineage, for the collective. And so understand that your surrender to be in and sit with the discomfort of these things coming up is a part of the healing process. You need to see how deep the thing goes in order to do the work to begin to heal it. And in this moment, I want to say, ask me how I know, because this has been my healing journey. It has been the work that I have been doing to do generational healing for my family and for the collective. It has been the work that I have been doing for Black women. It has been the work that I have been doing for God's chosen. It has been the work that I have been doing for us. And I will tell you that in the healing work, addressing the patterns requires support. God will show you what you need. Surround yourself with that support and the right voices that can speak life into and over you. And the last thing is that as these patterns come up around your mindset, I need you to know that things have the ability to come back and have the patterns repeating themselves because we don't adjust the mindset. We do the work on the situation and circumstance, but we don't recalibrate our minds. Recalibrating your mind is really important in this season. For any of you that have already been on your journey to healing work, you already know. You make a declaration, you start doing the work, and then all of a sudden the things start coming, the tests start coming. I immediately see Job, right? The tests start coming, and it's like, but did you really heal that? And a lot of times we meet those moments and we want to shirk away from what it is that it's asking us to look at again. But the reality is, the opportunity is there for us to step boldly forward and say, I already healed this once, I can heal it again. I've already healed this level of the thing. I understand where it comes from. Let me go see what else is there. God is always ready for us as our partner in our healing journey to bring the things to them that feel bigger than our ability to heal it ourselves. And so it's as easy as going to God to say, you keep revealing this thing to me. Clearly, there's something here. How do you suggest or direct me to heal this? What are the things that I'm not seeing that I need to pay attention to? And what I'm hearing in this moment that I don't have as a part of the plan for this conversation is the word forgiveness. As a reminder to you that forgiveness is one of the biggest barriers to our healing. Last night I was leading a session, the Divine Pivot 2-night event, and what came up for me through that was also this message about forgiveness and how forgiveness, we often forgive and we forget to forgive ourselves. And that is an important part of this. You cannot you cannot expect to release the patterns that you've had in the past and not forgive yourself for having been a part of those patterns. It's like if I think about the relationship with financial abundance, right? If I hold myself to the behaviors that I've had in the past when I didn't know what I know today about abundance, about the wounds and generational trauma that needed to be healed, I cannot expect that who I was back then would have the kind of wisdom I have today. I have it now because I've done the work. But I need to forgive and release the things that I was holding on to back then about who I have been with financial abundance. Otherwise, I will continue to block the flow that God is trying to send to me. So, in your healing, make sure that you are also taking your time to forgive yourself, to release yourself from the patterns and the behaviors that were never started by you, that you inherited through your genealogy, through your lineage, and to release the things that were patterns for your survival that you needed before you know what you know today. The next theme that God gave me is about the church. And when I talk about the church, I am specifically talking about who we are as the collective, the people. The church is going through a period of refinement. And what does refinement mean? Immediately, I think of when um, the 49ers were out, right? And they were looking for gold and they had these big sieves and they would put the water and all of the silt and everything in there and they're shaking it and they're looking for the gold. It's a period of refinement. And refining is removing the impurities and unwanted elements from a substance. So, what does it look like for us as a church to remove those impurities and unwanted substances? If you automatically started to think about people, I'm going to encourage you to take that conversation to God because that's not what this means. This is about us looking at the lessons, the things that we've been taught, the ways that we have been instructed to interact with one another, what we think is appropriate, right? The ways in which we have been raised up to believe that there are behaviors that do not look like love, to perpetuate that on one another. There is a lot of hierarchy connected to the way we behave as the church. There is a lot of this, you need to bend yourself, break yourself to follow these particular lessons in order to feel like you are connected and a part of belonging within the church. And God is calling us back to a time where it is, if you have love in your heart for me, you are the church. If you recognize that you are my child, you are the church. And so we are going to have to get rid of these things that stand in the way of allowing us to be one and the same, be connected, bound by love, bound by the relationship that we have because we are children of the Most High God. We are going to have to let that stuff go. And what I'm encouraging you to think about in this moment is, why is it important to you to hold on to something that in some way minimizes someone else's view of themselves, that seeks to try and detract from someone's relationship that they have directly with God? There are far too many versions of truth that are running around within the church. Far too many versions of truth. There is one truth. It is a truth of love. There are many ways in which we have brought things to life and we perpetuated things that we were taught that we don't even know why we repeat them. And they do not honor God, nor do they honor our relationship one to another. You cannot build a relationship, a bridge to one another, and call ourselves the church if we seek to want to destroy the belief system that people have cultivated in their relationship with God. It is not for us to say whether or not someone is truly honoring God. It is for God to judge the condition of their heart. Much of what we do in repetition and pattern came as a part of oppression that was built into the religions that we subscribe to. And I know that that wrestles with you. I know that it irks your spirit. I know that it makes you uncomfortable, but it's truth. And we cannot continue to perpetuate those things. We're looking right now at the disease that is embedded in hierarchy right now. If we look at the political climates across the globe, we are seeing that play out. We are seeing the weaponization of religion across the world, utilized as the reasons for war. And that story is as old as is the books, the text that we subscribe to. We have to do something different. It's time to remove the impurities and unwanted elements from the substance. So think about you as a vessel of God, you being the church. What are the impurities within? The things that you need to remove. And I'm not talking about the things that you are, taking to God and surrendering, the things that people tell you are wrong. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about your thinking, your beliefs, the relationship that you have with God, the blocks that are within. I was seeing earlier in a conversation with someone this like a hose which is supposed to have just free flowing water coming through and there being bubbles in the hose. What are the things that get in the way of you just being in the fullness of your own direct connection to God? Let's get rid of the impurities that are there. The things that people put into your mind about the way God wants to engage with you, they don't know. Other people do not have the full blueprint of who you are and what God has declared about your work to do in this world. You have that. You've got to know unequivocally that you are doing what it is God has called you to do. Because God is raising up people in this season who do not look like the usual suspects. There is deliverance that is going to come from people who in days before people could question, they could have sat and reasonably questioned based on what they know of the external view of someone's life to say, how could that be the person that God is using? But yet, if we go back to the text, we know that God can use anyone and anything. But we forget that when we are standing before a man that we somehow believed hasn't gotten the qualifications of being able to do the thing that God already said they were going to do before they breathed their first breath. Do you understand? We are in a time that is very different than where we have been. These new authorities are arising with irrefutable wisdom, irrefutable wisdom that is baked into their bones. It is in their cells. It is in their DNA. They know that they know that they know because God themselves placed it on the inside of them. And those generals that God is raising up are generals in God's army. This new authority that is coming, that is raising, that is saying yes, that is bold enough to do it in the way that those who God has called before had been lackadaisical about saying and stating and coming on and delivering to the people the food which God desired to them to have. God said, I will just go get another who will say it and declare it and know it and stand bold 10 toes down on what they know is deep within them because they know I put it there. And I will proudly tell you that I am one. I will proudly tell you that I am one. That when I come bearing God's truth. It is not about me. It is not about what I desire. I come in my prayer room and I have my own conversation with God about whether or not I think some of the things that are happening should be happening the way they happen. I have that kind of relationship and purity in my heart to God so that when I come on and deliver the word of God, I say it the way that God tells me to say it. That's why you saw me look down a moment ago, because I read the line that says, "New authorities are arising with irrefutable wisdom, and they are generals in God's army," because that's what God told me to deliver to you. Because some of you listening to this broadcast know that you are the new general. You know that God has anointed you to come speak truth to the masses. And you keep asking God, but why you? You keep saying to God, but I'm ill equipped. You keep saying to God, but I know what you're telling me, but it seems like it's crazy. How could anyone ever believe that what you've given me is true? But they will know. So I'm speaking right now to the generals. You're called forward and you cannot hide any longer. It is time for you to come, to step to the forward of the room, to step to the front of the crowd, to take your place on the stage and to say what God has been telling you, to say what God has placed on the inside of you. You can keep checking the condition of your heart in your relationship with God. You can keep asking God to make you small and move you out of the way, because that's what I do every time I come on and deliver a message and a word from God. But God is going to require you to speak. You are required to say what you came here to do. You are required, you are called, and you were formed for this moment. And we need you, because God needs people in places that are unexpected to declare the good works of God and to help people remember that as darkness begins to fall across the earth, that God still reigns and sits high and has already prepared for us. And what better preparation to have than to know that there are those who people don't assume would even have an inkling and an understanding of the vastness of God, who could speak to the truth of who God is and then call people into a place where they fall to their knees and God is seen once again as sovereign. Who else? But in a moment where we are celebrating the heels of celebrating for those in the Christian faith, the time where we recognize Jesus' resurrection. And who was Jesus? But of the same. Physically born to a woman, conceived immaculately, who journeyed and learned and studied and remembered and had a relationship with God that is beyond the best version of it that we have ever experienced in this lifetime. And in a short period of 3 years, blew our minds with what he was able to do. And let us be clear, people will talk about the life of Jesus from many different perspectives, but Jesus was a rebel. He was a renegade in the eyes of man. He sat with people who were forgotten, who were cast out. He took time for those who wanted and desired to have an understanding of the love of God. That's who God brought to be our Savior. So why would we assume that in this moment, the generals that God are raising up are any different? I mean, no disrespect to those of you who serve in an official capacity, who pastor churches, who are apostles. Y'all know who you are. You know what you're called to do. I don't need to come in here and affirm you. I need to come in this moment and remind those who are like me, who consider ourselves laypersons, who are like, I know I'm called, but how do you want me to do this thing? To know that God has already equipped you. And the burning that you feel in your body right now as you listen to this message is a reminder that you already have the answer. And for many of you who have asked God to make your platform be something that feels familiar, I'm hearing God say, yes, I will allow you to begin your work, your ministry, your building of my church, your alignment with being a part of the remnant. I will allow it to be in places that feel familiar, but don't expect to stay there for long, because I have called you to the nations and they need to hear the message in the way that I give it to you. You see, some of you within the physical church, within the physical confines of religion, are like, I want to be that. Will you set your ability to be what it is that is your purpose? You decide by your yes. But as long as you are subject to the confines of the way things have always been done and leaning to what you can see in the physical and what makes sense to you in your humanness, you're going to be in your holding pattern. Because what God is requiring is that we do things in a way that is so incredibly different that we say yes just because we know it's God. And we relinquish the relationship we have with whether or not people are going to accept, believe, and trust what we say. Even as I say this to you right now, I'm telling you that there are people listening to this who are going to be like, that woman is crazy. She don't know what she's talking about. There are people who are going to sit with the message and come back 20, 30 minutes later, 2 days later, 2 weeks later, and be like, I need to listen to this again. Because I heard her, but I really didn't hear it because my heart wasn't ready for it. And I can't be worried about that. My job is to come and deliver truth. And that is what I do. When you receive it, when you hold it, when you digest it, when you decide to say yes, that's between you and God. That is your relationship. If I am not directly on assignment with you to make sure that you know that you know that you know and that you heard it, if I'm not responsible. And I'm only responsible until my assignment with you ends. Then it's you and God. So I want you to know, for those of you like me, because I'm going to call myself a reluctant general for a moment, because I have been that in seasons past. I'm not anymore. I'm clear. I know who I am. I know who I am so deeply that you could not tell me anything that differs and have me believe you for a second. You can call me all kinds of things, but I know the truth of who I am. I am settled in the truth of who I am. I may not have all the answers for how it happens and what happens and all of those things. I'll have them when God says I'm ready for them and I need them. But I know who I am in God. You will get there too. I promise you. But you won't get there by listening to the world. You will get there by having the discipline of sitting with God and learning to listen to the truth within you. We wrestle with this idea of us having the proximity that we have to God because we have been taught that there is this great separation, and it simply is not true. You have been living with a lot of things that were created to help us, that as they have been continued to be perpetuated over time, have become the very thing that limit our ability to be who God has called us to be. You have to be in right relationship with God. And being in right relationship with God means honoring that God dwells within you. What is Holy Spirit if not a part of God? There is, I can't even. I'm like, now y'all got me preaching over here and I'm in the podcast. So I'm just going to, God is chuckling at me in this moment because this is who they have called me to be. They called me specifically to be this kind of person. And in our moments where we feel like we're like out in left field, God is like, and that's because that's where I placed you, because that is at the place of impact. The last thing that I had received for today is this nugget that I'm going to leave you with as I close the podcast episode. Whatever is within you that is smallness is going to creep forward. Whatever is within you that is smallness is going to creep forward. It's going to come. So if there are places in your life where you're feeling small, where you're feeling ill-equipped, where you're feeling like you don't have enough letters behind your name, titles, cloaks around your shoulders, scarves, um, banners, buildings, whatever it is that you think you need to be bigger, that thing, that scarcity that you are attached to is going to come forward. And it's not just going to come forward creeping out gently, but it's going to come forward with ferocity. And I want you to be aware that the places where you think you are small are going to be on display for you. And they're going to be on display for you to choose in that moment to declare that you with God are bigger than that thing, that feeling, that emotion, that pattern, that behavior, the old story. Where you think you are small is going to come forward. And eventually it will be on display for others. And so know that this is your moment to see, to explore, to look for, to analyze, to heal, to release, to rewrite the places where you are feeling smallness in your life. If you agree and know that you are a child of the Most High God, that you are divine royalty, that you were prepared, sent, designed, and created for such a time as this, you are anything but small. I have never walked next to so many giants who thought they were mice as I have in the last seasons of my life. I remember being small and walking next to so many people who are giants. Matter of fact, maybe that's why I was born into a family where my father, he's 6'11", like where I grew up around all of these people, all of his siblings are tall, male and female, and where, I grew up in the environment that he worked in where everybody was tall in professional basketball. Like maybe that's why, because God wanted me to get comfortable feeling small next to giants so I would recognize that I am also a giant. I just need you to know right now that you are not small, that you are not without the capability to do every single thing that God has put on the docket for you, that you have those things in your plan for a reason, that you were specifically called and made for that thing, and that you are enormous in the eyes and the sight of God. You are not small. Your problems are not bigger than you are. Your situations and circumstances certainly are no match for your God. So when you team up in that way, when you decide that you no longer are going to play small, when you decide that you're going to stand in the fullness of who God created you to be, oh, I root anything that is trying to come in your way. Look at the fireworks on the screen. I root anything that decides it wants to come in between that which you have set your eye upon changing. It cannot be successful against you and God. It cannot. So when these smallness, these moments come forward, creep forward, expect them. I like to believe in the life of Job that he got to a point where he was like, okay, what else? So let's be the okay, what else? And let it come forward, because there will not be time for you to reconcile with feeling small in the midst of the things that are up ahead. You're going to need to know who you are and know who God is and know what God is capable of. And what God is telling me to tell you right now, and the reason that your smallness is going to be private to you at first, but then it's going to be on display for others, is because God is saying, if you won't work on it yourself, I'm going to need to have others help you see that you cannot move forward in the way that I have declared unless you are allowing those places where you feel small to be excavated. You've got to do that work. You need to excavate it so that you can be standing in the fullness of who you are. You should be expecting on the other end of this season to be standing in your royal garb. You should be expecting to have the beautiful headdress, to have all of the beautiful chains and things that we see royalty stand around them. You should be expecting to have the scarves over your shoulders and the banners and the buildings and all the things I talked about a moment ago given to you by God because they're your birthright. But in order to get and receive those things, not the version of it that I was talking about before, that's the things that man looks upon. Yeah, those are lovely, but listen, they're not going to stand in the way of the generals that God has called. They're not going to stand in the way of those who said yes to their purpose. They're not going to stand in the way of God, those that God has called according to their purpose for this time, who were planned to be here to help us navigate through the darkness of the seasons that are up ahead. God will give you all of those things and more when you decide that you're not going to see yourself as small. How could you go into the royal ball, the place that God has prepared for you, the table that God has designed for you, and not have your royal garb? Well, a mouse can't fit in the garb that God has created for me to wear. It would swallow him up. Think about rulers who step in to rule, not knowing how to have conversations with people, how to make strategic decisions, how to pivot and transition when things start to go awry, who are not yet equipped for that thing. Well, part of your equipping season for this time is for you to recognize the giant that you really are. You are not small in God's mind, in God's vision, in God's view. You shouldn't be small in yours either. So I thank you for tuning in to this month's episode of the Divine Guidance. May 2025 is going to be a time of reconciliation as well. I don't have time to go deep into that theme, but you are going to see some things that look like they were never reconciled before become reconciled again. You're going to see some of the things that God has been showing you in the heavens about the recompense I mentioned earlier come to fruition. I hope that as you see, you feel, and experience those things, you will remember that you heard it here and you will come back and leave the parts of your testimony that are to be made public there so that someone else hearing the message knows that they're not alone. I hope that your eyes will be open and attuned to the magic and the mysteries that are the month of May, and that no longer will you allow the ways that those words have been used to denote something that is not divine, not of God, to stand in the way of your embracing that which is divine. I pray that you will embrace and understand the opportunities that are available for you to heal in this season and how important it is for you to heal. If you think about your healing and the connection to the smallness, they are one and the same. You will need to do this healing work. It is a part of your journey and your story, and it is a part of who you are. And lastly, I want you to remember that the church is going through a season of refinement, and to think about that sifter. What are the things that you need to sift out? Your own behaviors, your own life, your own thoughts. What are the things that God has been showing you that it's time to move away from because it's an impurity? And what are the things that we need to do as a church to bind ourselves together in love in the way that it was always intended? Anytime you need an answer for how to do the thing, you've got to go back to God. For those of you that like to deepen the understanding of what God is saying in the word, make sure you go to God first and you ask God to make it obvious to you through the word. Because what will happen sometimes is we will repeat to ourselves the things that we've heard other people say about scripture. And we don't understand that what was relevant for their time and what they had the capacity to understand is very different than what's available to us. We are in an awakening. We have been in an awakening. And it is time for us to embrace the fullness of the capacity of that which God has placed inside of us. There's no more playing small. And in order for you to do that, you have to leave room for God to show you things and to do things in ways you've never seen it before. And I am here to tell you that that is what marks this season. Peace and blessings. And I will see you next month on the Divine Guidance episode. Make sure that you follow and subscribe and tune in next week when we return with our leadership lesson for the month of May. Peace and blessings.